I'd like to open this meeting for the September Personnel Board meeting. You have before you the minutes from 8/15/17. And
introductions.
Rose, you're the only person who can make a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of the meeting that was held on Tuesday, August 15th.
All right, and I will second that motion. You've read these minutes. Are there any corrections or additions? One of the things that does not appear here is there's not a second to the motion concerning the discussion concerning the Assistant Treasurer Collection Salary Survey, or there was no second to that, so we have to revisit that at this meeting. All right, so the next thing in order is the appointment.
Are you going to vote on the minutes?
Oh, minutes, I'm sorry, thank you. All those in favor of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes have been approved. Mr. Kamiani, do you want to represent?
Good morning, thank you. Thank you for having me a second time. It's under appointments, but I think this is to revisit the salary for the assistant treasurer collector. I think we sort of put the cart in front of the horse in that when we're visiting that, we didn't exactly know where the town was as far as the fall town meeting. The warrant is open right now, so I want to say Mr. Balukonis is here with a decent idea of what the budget is going to look like or what any additions are going to be for the fall. So here we are revisiting it. Let's start where we began, if I could. We had a salary survey. I had come here asking for some consideration for the assistant treasurer collector who is here for 2 years. And the discussion was to see what the neighbors are doing. So I went through and I put together a salary survey. Actually, the first survey results came from Joan Gardecki, who had reached out to Charlton, and immediately we got back some information. So we had Charlton, Webster, Southbridge, Oxford, Sturbridge. I put in Bolton because I served on 2 boards with the treasurer collector in Bolton, and it was an easy phone call to make. If anything, a little bit higher, though geographically I don't know, as if we're closer to Boston. Regardless, Munson was also on there. Again, it was somebody I had known, and it was a position that was open, figuring an advertised position would be a better picture for people coming in. We had gone through, we came up with the average of $23.05 per hour, and really we're at about $38 hours per week, 37 and a half. So it really is a full-time position. Right now, our person is $17.17 after 2 years. Since this started, she has completed her 3 years of schooling, so she'll be able to take her certification for the assistant treasurer. They make as much as I have my certification recognized by the Department of Revenue, they permit the assistant to go through and take the same classes, take the same test. The designation falls on you as certified assistant, and really at the end of the day, if I were to walk away, she could assume my position, and it goes from being the assistant treasurer to certified treasurer. So the bar is placed just as high. I've talked an awful lot. Were there any questions? One of the things I had made mention of very technically savvy. There were a few things. The person who previously served as the assistant treasurer was the assistant treasurer. There was no crossover into the collector portion. She had worked in another office. Right now, we have an assistant treasurer and assistant collector. So if I'm not there, we have somebody handling things. There were a few things that I thought were noteworthy, maybe in the last 3 to 6 months. Weren't in the job description, but they were given to her and they were completed. Wonderful job. Postage. Arguably, the treasurer and collector send out the most postage. If I'm mailing out AP checks, it's anywhere between 25 and 100 every week that go out. Also, my mailings trump everyone else's, and that wasn't a pun. We're doing a lot of mailings. We went from an older postage machine to an all-computerized postage machine, and I say we, it's the royal we. I gave this to my assistant. We got the quotes. We did the integration, and instead of it being an older system where you'd have to hook up via a modem, we have a wireless postage machine that does its updates. We go through and put postage on it through the cloud and what have you. Also, our payroll is pretty much the same. Payroll used to be an old ledger-style process of things. We have gone from a computer program in-house to being something cloud-based with all of the storage external on somebody else's cloud. And that's sort of because we need to go through and do a lot more reporting than previously done. Unemployment ties in with all of the other numbers that get reported to the state, ultimately to the federal government. I would imagine there's more data than they could ever analyze, but we went through, and I gave that to her as a task. You prove you can do some more, and we will reward you with that. So we've gone 2 generations of payroll and probably 25 years of postal service. Actually, the machine was, I want to say we got rid of 2,000 technology that was put in this building. Just a couple of the examples of what has been done independently.
So once more to review this, you're looking for an increase from $17.17 and $19 an hour, which is an increase of $1.83 an hour, is that correct?
Yep. If we go back to taking a look at things, we have the lowest number on my whole chart being $19 per hour. In all fairness, we have somebody who's gone through the 2 years. Actually, we started this, it was just before 2 years, so first week in July would have been the anniversary, and we'd be putting her onto the salary chart really at the bottom. Had I my druthers, we'd be talking about a number a little closer to the middle of things. I realize the town of Dudley is about a half a pace back from its neighboring towns. I appreciate that. It's one of the challenges for working here, so make my request a realistic one to get her at least onto the chart.
So once more, you have that, you're granting that merit increase as her supervisor. And it
Correct.
has to go through us and through the
Board
Board
of
of Selectmen.
And then
Mr.
we have to-
Balcones, can you give us some,
And then we have to get funds appropriated at town meeting.
right, so can you give us some,
Sure, so I had an opportunity to sit down and look at this since the last meeting, and as you know, Rich has correctly pointed out, Dudley has some challenges in terms of what it's willing to pay its employees. And generally, we've used as a standard to try to get our employees to 90% of average. So if you look at the chart that Rich put together, which shows that the average is $23.05 for a comparable position. That would bring the average pay, if we want to compare apples to apples, to $20.75. So I feel that his request at $19 an hour is reasonable. I feel that for the reasons that he stated, hiring good, talented people is a challenge, and keeping those talented people is also a significant challenge too. So I would support the increase to $19 an hour, which is still below what comparable positions are being paid in other towns, but represents what I feel is fair market value for this position. What has changed since, shifting gears, what has changed since the last meeting where we talked about this is I indicated that we didn't have any money available for increases for other employees this year. And I've gone through the budget and identified some surpluses in budget accounts where I expect that there'll be a proposal put forward to grant non-union employees a cost of living increase this year. So this wouldn't be, if there was a increase that was granted it's not a cost of living increase, but there's a pay increase that was given, this wouldn't be the only person. So, you know, I feel that we have money available. If monies are needed in the treasurer collector's budget, we have monies available to be able to pay for this and also pay for raises for our other employees. That's it.
Are there any questions for?
Yes,
Mr.
I have some. Your clerk was hired 2 years ago. The assessors clerk was hired 2 years ago. Your clerk was hired at a rate of 17 or whatever it was. The assessors clerk hired during the same year was hired for $14.57. That's a big difference. And I don't understand how we hire people at $14 an hour and somebody else in that same year at $17 an hour. Your collector's clerk, who handles lots of money, has been here for 13 years and only earns $17.65, yet you want to promote your clerk to $19 an hour. I don't see the justification in this or the equitability. And unless we do something with all these wages, I have a hard time understanding it.
Okay, well, let's go back to square one. When I first approached the Personnel Board and asked to have this to look at it, okay, the first thing I was told, what do our neighbors do? Okay. Subsequently, I received an apology saying, oh, we shouldn't have sent you out on that. And at the end of the day, I'm very happy to have gone through and gotten the most recent numbers and the best data so that the best decision could be made. When it comes to hiring people and what they do, I will say that my assistant will handle a similar amount of money as the collector's clerk does, in addition to other things. There's administrative duties that are given to her. You have a water sewer clerk who is paid $19 an hour. I would say that the previous clerk had been paid the same amount, if not more money. And the last 3 water sewer clerks are working in other municipalities for higher rates. My argument right now is that we have a good person who is doing more than what they were expected to do when they were hired.
Well, don't you think that the other people in this building are doing more than they were expected to do? Don't forget, a couple of years ago, we cut hours and we shifted people around in order to, because we didn't have any money, and I understand that. But to single one individual out when these people have been here for many years and are making less doesn't seem right to me. I mean, I'm fighting for all these people.
I'll politely interrupt saying the first offer to cross-train was made to the collector's clerk. We spent about 90 days trying to get her to do additional treasurer duties. At the end of the day, we had a voluntary cessation of it, saying that that was not a direction that she wanted her career to go. So as far as rewarding people who had been here and had demonstrated a good work history. We went to do more things and make them more valuable to the town. And that offer was politely passed over. So I fully appreciate you wanting to reward somebody who has done a good job for more than just a few years. And I've tried to promote that, and it was not a fit. We had the employee say, this is not the direction they would like to go, and it wasn't something they were willing to do. The plan with the assistant treasurer collector was always to expand what was going on. Health insurance alone, there are a lot of my peers who have a separate human resource department. Right now, the town of Dudley has one bell jar, and it fits over the treasurer's office. Between the unemployment, between all of the retirement, all of the retiree benefits, in addition to the health insurance, that all comes out of one place. So what's being taken off of my plate, goes onto her plate, where previously that didn't happen. So we have a true assistant who is doing similar things. So when I go on vacation, it doesn't mean we press pause on what goes on in the treasurer's office. There's a continuation of things.
Well, I'm sure, Rich, that happens in all the departments. If the assessors clerk goes on vacation, she's got an assistant. The tax collector, the same thing. But
Town clerk.
I don't understand, when we hire people, how we justify here and here. When someone is hired, no one is born into the job. They have to learn it. You're an example of that. And when you were hired at I don't remember exactly, at a higher rate than what the other one. But we had other people that came in and didn't think that was fair. So we had to adjust some of these other people. Now you want to hire, you have a good clerk, and I know you want to keep her, you don't want to lose her. However, is it fair to someone who works in the next office to be shunned and not get a raise? Unless we adjust them all, I don't think it's fair.
Well, I don't think it's a circular argument. If you give to one, you have to give to them all. I'm looking to break out of that and say, instead of showing up and not getting in trouble, you get your cost of living adjustment. I'm coming before the personnel board to demonstrate that this person has exceeded the expectations and should have the wage adjusted for that.
We have a clerk.
You have a water department clerk who is being paid a higher amount because of their ability to fund that position.
Oh, maybe we got money to fund some of these other positions and give them a raise.
My point being that I have been here for the last 4 meetings and have been the only person coming forward asking for an adjustment. I don't know what sort of communications you've received via letter, via email, via an in-person request. I'll speak to the treasurer collector's position, saying that the town of Dudley has a person who is overachieving, and
just once more for clarification.
Yes.
You're seeking a merit,
correct.
which he has a right to do because of expectations that have been exceeded. And that merit request then becomes part of that person's salary and stays there. So it is a request for a merit
Correct.
increase.
Okay, so what's to stop the other department heads from coming here and asking for a merit increase for their people?
Nothing.
I'm thinking of what happened 2 years ago. Adjustment, a little twist in their job duties. They were gonna empty an extra wastebasket. We changed the job duty. We gave them a change in title and a change in their rate of pay. So I understand your position. I understand you probably work very well, and she takes directions very well, and you want to keep her, you don't want to lose her, and you're seeking an increase. Would you have come for an increase if the water and sewer department hadn't paid their clerk $19 an hour?
Absolutely.
I don't know about that. Would you have sought $1.83 an hour increase?
The $19 came up from work that I did. The idea that the weekly pay comes up from a chart that Joan had put together. I didn't put this together. This is coincidence that it came up. I spent time going through and making sure that I knew who made what and where. And the closer you get to Boston, we start adding $2, $3, $4, $5 an hour to this chart, and the average of $23, and it would be in an office that had another 3 or 4 or 5 people in it. So the idea that I'm tying anything back to the town of Dudley is coincidence. I made this chart. The $19 that came there is the $19. It's the email that came back from Joan Gardecki, who had asked, could you share some information with us? And the idea that my clerk would be that much lower on this chart had we put our information on there. That's where the $19 came from. We had somebody come in here and start at 19. Traditionally, the job has paid better because the two funds have the ability to throw a few more dollars out there. That's been the history of it. I'm sorry.
Could I just add a couple of things?
Please.
I think not all positions are created equal. I think that there are positions that have a higher degree of knowledge, expertise, and those positions demand more pay, such as the assistant in the treasurer collector's office. All of our positions are important, but if we were to have a pay scale, you would find that there are certain people within that pay scale that get more on the basis of what their position involves. The other thing that I'm concerned about is continuity in the office. Rich is in an elected position, and I'd love to see Rich stay here throughout his career, but as we know, his position is open to the whim of the voters every couple of years, and this position represents what I see as continuity in the office, regardless of what happens with the treasurer collector's position. It's incumbently important that we have someone there that will continue to run the office and can run the office in Mr. Carmignani's absence. Things have become much more sophisticated. As Mr. Carmignani mentioned, the unemployment claims, the health insurance. He failed to mention property and liability and workers' comp insurance, which are also administered through that office. And Mr. Carmignani has significant requirements in terms of investment and custody of town funds. And if you look at all of the other town hall positions that are listed here, there are none of them that have custody of town funds to the extent that this position has. This person, and Mr. Carmignani, has authority over the town's investments. And so we want to hire someone who's best and bright and worthy of a higher salary. And everyone is worthy of a higher salary. And honestly, I heard you in terms of the fact that we should do a wage study. What the wage study will show is it'll be a classification study. It'll show that there are certain positions that should be slotted higher than other positions. That's what it will show. And then it'll show a range of wages. But everywhere that I've worked in my career, your assistant treasurer collector is typically fairly highly paid, and more highly paid than some of your clerk positions that are here. And I would love to see everyone get raises. There's just not money to be able to do that. And so I support his request again. I think that the continuity, the expertise, and the knowledge that this position demands is worthy of an increase. I feel that 90% of average is what this position is worth, but Dudley cannot afford that. So therefore, the amount that Mr. Carmignani is recommending at $19 an hour is what I consider to be a reasonable rate of pay for this position. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go along with that, but on the other hand, the assessors clerk, they handle a lot of things. They have to go, the assessor has to go out and measure the buildings and to set, and she sets the tax rate. They have to give abatements and what have you. So I think that position is pretty important too.
I agree.
And that particular girl, I assume it's a woman, was hired for $14 an hour. His position for his clerk was hired at 17. Apples for apples, oranges for apples, what's hell going on here?
I think that if you look at the assessor's position, there is many clerical duties associated with that. And I think if you look at Mr. Carmignani's position, there's a certain level of professionalism and expertise, technical expertise that's required above this. I'm not saying the assessor's position is not worth more money than it is, but I feel as though the person that Mr. Carmignani has is uniquely specialized, fitted for the job.
Yeah.
And that's just my position.
If I could add to something, we're talking about performance of duties. There's 3 people in this town who are bonded. 2 of them are sitting in this room. The 3rd one is my assistant. So the state views it as important as my job. There's an insurance company's performance bond, meaning they need to be of character, and the position is of high enough authority where their action or failure to take action needs to be indemnified. So there is a bond on my assistant. So objectively, the auditors, the Department of Revenue, feels that position is a little bit different than some of the other positions that could be labeled clerical. So that's the reason we have a bond for her.
Ms. Flynn, did you want to say something?
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Actually, 98% of what I
You
was,
have to speak up, I forgot my hearing aids.
all right, is that better? Thank you. 98% of what I was chomping at the bit to say, Mr. Balukonis already said it very eloquently, and I thank you for that. I just, in my very layman's terms, wanted to say, I think there are 2 separate things going on here, and I agree. Anyone who's worked here knows that our clerks have been underpaid. I think we pay probably about 85% to other towns 100%, and that's the way it is, and we have learned to work around that. When you're comparing clerks with a position like Mr. Carmignani is talking about, you really can't. And you mentioned one office in particular, the assessor's office. The clerk is wonderful. She does her job beautifully. But when the assessor is on vacation, and I'll stop there, I'm going to take it back to my office. I just returned from vacation. I have been here over 20 years, and when I come back, there's usually 30 people that needed to be sworn in, and oh my goodness, we couldn't issue the letters of no appeal, and this needed to be signed, and that needed to be certified, and it's all on my desk. When my clerk was hired, she was a clerk at $14 an hour. She's now an assistant town clerk, making $3 less an hour than the lowest paid assistant town clerk in neighboring towns, and that's Dudley. But what I'm saying is I came back and all of those things were addressed while I was gone. My office did more than just stay open, and she wasn't a human answering machine like, well, I'd love to help you, but I can't, and the town clerk will handle it when she gets back. It was taken care of, and people were serviced, and the town just continued as though it were if I were sitting at my desk. And that is huge, not just for me personally or the office, but for the community and anyone coming to that office for service. And I think that's what we're looking at. And Lord knows I've been a champion as much as I could for other offices. We do need to bring the salaries up. But to compare a clerk with a position like an assistant town clerk or treasurer collector, you can't. You just can't. The responsibilities are much greater, and that's all I had to say. And I support Mr. Carmignani's request for a raise.
Mrs. Smiley, do you have anything to comment or ask?
I've been playing catch-up today because I was not here last week. I've reviewed all of these charts, and I do recall being involved with the interviews and hiring of both of the assistants in your office. I do know that you need to pay a little bit more to get someone who really knows the job, has the experience that we need. I was concerned coming into this before I had heard all of the information about the ability to pay across the board and the cost of living, money not being there before. But based on everything that I've heard today and reviewed in here, I'm inclined to support that. I think it's a large increase as far as the dollars per hour. I understand where the number's coming from. I understand that it's being compared to other towns. I know Webster and Southbridge are bigger towns, bigger budgets. Charlton, I think, is a little bit, bigger as well, but we're not paying the average either. So I would support it, thinking that, well, you know, it's still going to go, this is the first step, and it will still go before the selectmen and the town meeting. So I'd be happy to see it get to that point and see where it goes.
Is there any, I'm sorry.
Oh,
go ahead,
I'm sorry,
continue.
I do know that there will probably, be people who are disappointed that, that they're not in the same position, but we have to handle it as they come. I think it would be a shame to lose somebody that's valuable in the town hall.
I agree. I think it's going to be difficult for some of the other workers to say, oh, so-and-so is getting a raise, but it is a first step, and it's a step for everyone. The fact that it would be recognized and verbalized that, yes, we know that you're not receiving enough, but to bring it up to at least the average or closer to what's the bottom rung, I think is a step forward for all of us in every department. And this is a merit increase, and certainly not bringing every office up to where they should be, but it's a step that we can all work towards. And I think that other people need to take hope in the fact that this would be recognized and that sooner or later the rest of us would come up to where we should be. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? If there isn't, I would ask for a motion to accept Mr. Carmignani's proposal.
I'll make that motion to accept the request from the treasurer collector regarding the salary increase for the assistant.
Is there a second? Is it appropriate for me to second that? Do you know?
Yeah, you have every right as a member of the committee to second.
Yes, and I'll
the motion.
second that motion.
Correct.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
So the motion passes 2-1.
Thank you very much. I know this has taken a little bit more time to get worms and everything, but on behalf of my assistant, appreciate your patience, and to the town clerk and town administrator, thank you. And to your outgoing clerk for the personnel board,
Thank you.
thank you.
The next item is resignations, and we regretfully, most regretfully, have the letter of resignation from Joan. Joan, I want to personally thank you for the direction that you have provided for me in this short period of time, and I know that you have probably done so for Mary Beth.
I
I mean-
couldn't do it without you.
Your insight is invaluable, and I know that the town is losing an excellent employee and one who is loyal to the town of Dudley. So I wish you the best in your retirement.
Thank you. It's going to be hard to replace you.
It certainly will be.
Yes.
We
Yes,
also,
but you will enjoy your retirement.
I will.
Next is old business. There has been a position, a library position, temporary substitute library aide. That position has been filled by Lisa Rice, who was hired and started the position on Wednesday, September 13th, 2017. New business, you have before you the timeline that is going to all department managers and as far as the timeline for evaluations. And that went out, will be going out on the 22nd, this coming Friday, and all evaluations should be in by December 15th. Is that correct, Joan?
The Personnel Board should have made their recommendations by then, yes.
Yes. So hopefully we will have that for that time frame. Last year, we did not. It wasn't until, I think, January before we had everything.
November 14th
Is
is
the
the
time
day
f-
that we receive the forms from all of the
Exactly.
departments.
So we will see if that timeline is met. We urged people to keep that timeline last year, so hopefully that will happen this year. Youth Service Librarian posting, it was posted in-house on August 15th to the 22nd, and then Karen Wall advertised it on Library List Services. And I have not heard anything about any interviews yet.
No, I haven't heard anything. Karen is actually was waiting until, the library director was waiting until she hired the aide before she started with the youth services.
Is there any other business? If not, then I would suggest once more, not suggest, but remind everybody that our next meeting is Tuesday, October 17th, 2017, at 9 a.m. in this room. And also, I would strongly urge once more that everybody let whomever notifies us next month of the meeting that whether we will be attending or not attending. So I assumed, Rose, today, you're usually here so punctual. I thought maybe you had forgotten, but I said, no, she always says if she's coming, so.
No, I'm sorry, I was paying my water bill.
That's quite all right. I'm glad that we're able to have the meeting today. So I will now entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Seconded?
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.